there's literally nothing we can do at this point to stop climate change. We're trying to stem the climate change. That's how the climate scientists talk about it. He talks about it as, I'll get to that, is that we have our hand on the temperature dial. So you've seen how hot our temperature is, the global temperatures in 2016, and the way one of the most famous climate scientists talks about it is that it's basically up to us, like how hot we're gonna let our planet get, and our cities and our nations and our communities get, versus how much we're gonna try to keep things as they are. Which is like, yeah, we could probably adapt at this point to with the existing temperatures, but as if we continue kind of unfettered and let the carbon emissions continue to go up, then it's just things are just going to happen. The tipping point will happen to such an extent that we just will not be able to do much about it. So it's like we have this short window of opportunity, is how the scientists tell me, is what's happening, which is why so many of us are just dedicated to this as our cause, because again, it's not about any of us in this room, it's about every single kid that any of us know and love and care about. So, in any case, and I should say, so I have a question, that I'm okay, by the way, taking questions in the middle of my presentation. Sorry, I usually say that at the beginning. But please, you want to ask a question?
I had a quick question.
Sure.
Which is, when you say these are legally binding,
yes.
What are the penalties for cities when they fall short?
Yeah, so what happens is, again, this is under CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, and there is a provision in this law that allows plaintiffs' lawyers, basically, to do what's called a private attorney general lawsuit. So these plaintiffs' lawyers go in and they sue the cities. So they're used to this. I mean, this is a tool that they've been given by the state to allow them to hold local governments accountable. So that's what happens, and that's what has happened. For example, in the county of San Diego, again, this court went all the way up to the Supreme Court of California because the county kept appealing and saying, we don't have to do this, we don't have to do this. And the courts kept saying, yes, you do at every level. And then the county of San Diego paid $1 million to a plaintiff's attorney at the end of the day, which is crazy to me, in lieu of just doing the right thing. It was like, no, we don't. That's just kind of the nature of local governments, to resist, and just waste taxpayer dollars in court. But this case is now like precedent, and has a lot of influence now if you talk to city attorneys or county attorneys about how they're going to move forward, next steps. And I also just want to highlight, and I hate to be, I'm being really strong here because I want people to do the right thing, cities to do the right thing, because there are people just waiting in the wings to sue cities and counties over this issue. I mean, that is just the reality, because they're so used to cities and counties not doing the right thing. And one of the reasons is because there's never been people pressuring the cities and counties to do this. There's a lot of cities and counties that have updated their general plans, but if you don't have a community organization or community member saying, hey, where's the climate plan? Then they just kind of skate by and they're like, wink, nod, we don't have to do it, But it's sort of like, you get my organization coming in and then things are not good, right? You get lawyers involved who know the law, and then suddenly the conversations change and it gets more serious. So yeah, it's, again, any local government that is updating their general plans has to, for the long-term growth and development of their community, has to reduce that carbon footprint. Question?
Yes, I know we've dealt with this issue in the past. Normally through sub-regional targets, you work with SANDAG, you work with SCAG and OCOG, and with 8032, ST375, and so on, we understood that the reduction targets are at a regional and sub-regional level. This is really the first time I'm hearing a requirement at the city level itself. So saying this law really reiterates the cities and it's not a regional.
Yeah, because these plans, these general plans, are plans for the cities or a county, right? So they have their own carbon footprint to reduce that's separate and apart from an entity like, sorry, I don't know the Orange County one, SCAG, did you say? And SANDAG in San Diego. Yeah, these regional entities that usually manage transportation. So they each have separate requirements, and it all fits into the into the larger state target, right? It's like you have to do your fair share. And so that's done by technical experts, figure out what the fair share is.
Okay, because I understand there's some regional and sub-regional, some jurisdictions were able to meet it better than others and balance out over the region. Now, say every city.
Yeah, it's different and it's totally separate. It's a different analysis. So I know for the city of San Diego, our analysis, yeah, we integrated what our regional entity was doing and sort of, so we said, this is what the state law, this is what the state is doing through their policies. So we'll let the state handle that little slice of our responsibility. Here's what the the regional entity is doing for us. It's SANDAG, called San Diego Association of Governments. Here's what they're doing. But guess what? This is what I mean, how it changed. These charts will flip you out because of how steep the reductions are. What the state was going to do, what the regional government was going to do, required to do, took us like this far. And then where we had to be was down here. So the gap for local governments is massive. And that's what I mean. People are just beginning to understand this. I mean, talk to the mayor of San Diego. He's like, now he gets it. And he's like, oh my God, what are we doing? And mostly he's saying, what are we doing? Because it's like, we have no money for this. Like, where's the money coming from? And it's freaking everybody out. Because the bulk of the reductions are going to come from the local governments past 2020. Up to this point, it's all been about the state. The state has adopted its own policies and programs that have, sort of gotten us to the 2020 target. But post 2020, it's no man's land, and local governments are on the hook because of these long-term growth plans. Question?
Maybe you're going to get to this, but is that because of this gap that you're talking about? Is it possible to get to those goals with the current infrastructure, just some retrofitting, or are you talking about raising cities and rebuilding from the ground up?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you talk on the coastline, yeah. I mean, there are strategies. I mean, there's the managed retreat strategies where you literally have to tell, there's infrastructure that will have to be moved, or like Amtrak rail lines that are run on the coast that will have to be moved, or water and sewage pipelines that might be on the coast that will have to be moved. And we were already doing this in one of our cities in Imperial Beach and in Del Mar as well, as a kind of wealthier North County city. They're already ahead of this game, and they're freaking out too, by the way, because their entire coastline is going to be gone in 20 years. That's what all the projections say. So they're like, oh my God, we have to move everything. And there are homes there, by the way, so private homeowners, have talked openly about needing to move. But that's different than to actually hit the reduction targets, because that's like adaptation, how we actually manage to survive in this new world. And you're talking about hitting the state targets. It's mostly, we'll get to what we did in the city of San Diego to hit these targets, because it is ultimately just a math equation. You know how much you have to reduce your carbon footprint, and you just mathematically, identify strategies to get you there. That's where I think, because we have 100% clean energy requirement in the city of San Diego, and the reason is because we have to get to 100% clean energy in order to even get close to hitting the state target. And at the same time, that's also why we're doing such significant retrofitting of our urban communities. And so it's all just it's a constant evaluation and analysis, and it's done in real time, and it's happening as we speak. So again, like I said, there are no magic answers. Because, for example, our SANDAG, who's our regional entity for all 3 million people in the city of San Diego, or in the region of San Diego, did an analysis of, so for our regional target to hit this, is combining all the city requirements and the regional requirements, what would it take for us to hit the state goal? Even if we did 100% clean energy for every single, all 3 million people in the county of San Diego, and we did 100% electric vehicles, right? So everybody's suddenly driving an EV, which, by the way, that's never gonna, maybe one day, but we're not there, even close to getting there. We still wouldn't hit the state target. Meaning that is how dramatic the 40% reduction in carbon emissions is. But as the governor says, he's like, but that's what best available science says we have to do. This is the conundrum we're in. We really got ourselves into a bind in terms of being a fossil fuel economy, what the impacts of that. So it's going to be tough stuff. Question?
Yeah, did you find as you were crafting your plan that there were other benefits?
Yes.
GHG reductions, whether economic, community health, other things that could help not only sell the message, but maybe even deliver dollars that you didn't think were there?
Oh, heck yeah. So that is part of the presentation. Sorry, I'll get to some of it. But absolutely. So when I met with the Chamber of Commerce, it was absolutely about economic development. And frankly, our mayor, if you hear him give a presentation, that's what he's going to focus on, are the clean energy jobs. Because in San Diego, we are booming with our clean tech industry is booming. So there are really middle class and upper class jobs that are being generated. And so that's a huge selling point. because, we're saying, yeah, we'd like to be a clean tech hub. And then, of course, there's the public health benefits. I mean, you're just talking about cleaner air and cleaner water, and that's something that resonates with people. And then the other public health benefit of, retrofitting our urban communities, because some of these communities we're just not going to be, they're going to remain the suburban kind of single-family communities that they are now, because they're so far away from the urban core, so there's not much we can do. But in the urban communities, people are really excited about the idea that they can walk and ride their bike and not have to get in their car to carry out their life. And especially that, as we talk to millennials, that's a lifestyle that they want. They don't really want to have to drive an hour to work every day. I mean, they have a different mentality and idea about what they want their future to look like. So there are benefits like that get discussed in terms of co-benefits. And then what was another? I thought of another one and I can't think of it. But yes, you're absolutely right. With each stakeholder, you kind of you figure out what's of most interest to them, and you target the message to them to meet like what their greatest needs are. Question? Hi.
Which bills, this election is which bills should we be paying attention to?
Well, so the legislature just finished their session. So you're talking about in California? Yeah. So, there's a host of them, but the one I just discussed was SB 32. That is really the most important bill that I think will be applicable to Orange County to codify that executive order. Question?
Yeah, you said that the local governments that are updating their general plans would have to include a climate action plan?
Yes.
Is there a requirement that they have to update their general plan?
Yeah. Yeah, there is, but there isn't. That's not enforced. So there's general plans, I believe, I don't know, 10 years or 20 years, but that's not ever enforced. So some cities, frankly, at this point now, especially in San Diego, they're understanding that they have to update their general plan. They're not going to be like having to hit climate targets or like, well, we'll just hold off on that. But there are other reasons that general plans get updated, like the state requires like a housing element, which requires them to build a sufficient housing supply to meet the needs of their community. So it sort of pushes them regardless of whether they don't want to move forward. So there's sort of competing pressures for different reasons, like that are important to the community. But you're right, some cities just sit on a general plan that was done in 1975, and there's not much we can do about that. But what's going to be interesting is now that this SB 32 just passed, it actually will go to a state agency called the California Air Resources Board, and they're going to identify their own programs and regulations around what that means for cities. So that, in my opinion, that will be another pressure point for cities, because they're going to again see the gap between what their policies are doing, what regional policies for transportation are doing, and because that gap is so large, they're going to again say to the cities, guess it's on you now. So again, different pressure points. Yeah. Question?
Does SB 32 establish a deadline on when cities need to adopt a plan?
No, and that's what I was saying. So literally, it's like, the ink is still fresh. The governor just signed it, so now it goes to this state agency for like adoption of regulations to implement it. And so I don't know what that's going to say. But like I said, with the driver that's been pushing the cities in San Diego, and I'm understanding there are some cities in Orange County that are also updating their general plans, that's a driver due to CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act. That's separate and apart from whatever the state's going to do with implementing SB 32. Okay. So again, now I think we're just getting to the strategies that we had. We already talked about the laws. So these are the hallmark strategies in the City of San Diego's climate plan. The reason I think they're important and relevant is it's like every city has to do basically the same thing. It's about changing the way we move people around, especially for commutes, and changing the way we power our lifestyle. So for us, in doing the math equation of how we were ever going to hit this 2030 state law, we needed 100% clean energy, 50% of people, this again, just commuters, because that's when the majority of greenhouse gas emissions are occurring. 50% of commuters taking public transit, walking or biking. 35% trees, because the thing that can never be overlooked, and it is one of my favorite strategies, because talk about co-benefits, is that in San Diego especially, we have a lot of concrete and asphalt, not a lot of trees. In Irvine, it seems actually like you guys are you have a pretty decent amount of trees, because you're like the first planned city, I think, in the nation or something, or, you know, I mean, you guys planned ahead, but for a lot of urban communities, it's just, there's just, you know, that urban heat island effect, where it's like, during these heat waves and these hot days, it just gets even hotter due to all the asphalt and concrete. So one way to cool the city down, I mean, this is legitimate and proven, is to put shade trees in. And of course, the other benefit is, number one, if you live on a property near a tree, I mean, that's like, who doesn't want to live on a tree-lined street? And of course, it means, oh, maybe we could still walk outside, you know? Because I have friends in Phoenix and Tucson, like, I mean, during the day, literally everyone's just inside. I mean, it's a weird lifestyle, and that's kind of where we're headed. And you know, it just bums me out again for kids. But you know, if we do create this kind of urban tree canopy in a meaningful way, in San Diego we're talking about pretty significant investment in trees, then maybe people could still enjoy the outdoors and, you know, keeping the temperature down. And then 0% waste, of course. And that's about, because when we're throwing everything in their mother into the landfill, unfortunately it's emitting methane, which is one of the key components of climate pollution. So I just want to quickly touch on how we're getting to, because I get asked this question a lot, so how in the world is the city of San Diego getting to 100% clean energy? Because right now, we have 3 major utilities. I think Irvine is covered by SoCal Edison, right? Then you probably don't have an option. I mean, if it's like San Diego, in San Diego we can only purchase our electricity and gas from San Diego Gas and Electric. They're a monopoly, regulated monopoly. I believe it's Orange County. For the majority of the cities, although I think somebody on Saturday told me one city has their own municipal utility, but for the most part, the majority of people have to purchase electricity from the monopoly utility. That's mostly true in Northern California. It's called Pacific Gas and Electric. So the problem is that the cities and local governments have no control or jurisdiction over these utilities. They're regulated by the state by a different entity called the Public Utilities Commission. So the cities can't tell, in the city of San Diego, we can't tell SDG&E you have to provide us with 100% clean electricity by 2035 because we have no control or jurisdiction over them. They're a separate entity. So we had to identify a separate model of something we actually have control or jurisdiction over. And that was a program designed by the state called Community Choice Energy. And it's sort of foreign to us in Southern California, but it's all the rage in Northern California. It's like so San Francisco just adopted it, Marin County has adopted it, Sonoma County has adopted it. I mean, it's just like, it's a domino effect. So what it is this program model that allows for cities and local governments to purchase electricity for 100% of their residents and businesses, and allows the utility, the existing monopoly utility, to deliver that power. So it's kind of this hybrid public-private partnership, where some places like LA, the city of LA has the LA Department of Water and Power, Chinatown. If anyone seen the movie Chinatown, that's what they own their water and power system. They control all the infrastructure. They control the decision over what kind of electricity is on their lines. In the city of LA, right? They're a fully contained system. So we go have these monopoly utilities, who by the way are making a ton of money off of us, and they're sitting fat and happy. But the state sort of said, but there's no competition in the marketplace, local governments have no control, and there's no local accountability. So, and there's no choice, right? Because it's monopoly. So we don't, those of us who live in under these monopolies, there's nowhere else we can go to. And so they created this program that said, okay, we're not gonna freak out, we're not gonna upend the entire utility industry, we're gonna allow them to keep all their pipes and wires that delivers electricity to us. Like they'll be responsible for delivering electricity, you know, reliably and safely and securely. But local governments get to enter into contracts to choose who their electricity provider is and whether that fuel is clean or dirty. And it was meant as a way to help cities push the envelope on clean electricity so that they would have a better option and enter into these negotiations for these contracts on their own. So it's been hugely successful in Northern California to such an extent, and from a business proposition, by the way. Like if you talk to elected officials in Northern California, they'll say, the reason we did it is because it's a no-brainer business proposition. Because every single community choice program that exists in Northern California offers lower electricity rates for every single customer class, residential, commercial, business, with higher clean energy content. Because suddenly when you inject a little competition into the marketplace, suddenly when you take out the profit margin, right? Because local governments are not allowed to make a profit. So when they're negotiating these contracts, they're not adding in a profit margin, the way the utilities are, right? Or monopoly utilities, which they're required to do, by the way, because they have to answer to Wall Street. That's what they're required to do as corporations, is make their shareholders happy, so they factor in profit. Suddenly, when you get these nonprofit local governments negotiating for contracts, the prices go down because it's a different entity with a different purpose. And so because of that, again, it's like this is just kind of, from an economic standpoint, it just makes sense. But it also makes sense from the idea of how we ever going to, like what we call green the grid. How are we ever going to get 100% clean electricity on the grid? So in the city of San Diego, we're doing a feasibility study. It's the first step. And I'm happy to say that LA County, because, and again, this is kind of like very well known in Northern California, but that's like a different state, as everybody knows. But in Southern California, we're going to have LA County. They're on the cusp of adopting community choice energy. So I think it's going to become way easier for the rest of us to see it like in action and live, because it's a seamless experience for the customer. For like the person still just turns on their computer, turns on the light switch, nothing. There's no difference. The only thing that's different is that on their bill will be this community choice energy, the reduction in the rates. That'll be the only difference that the customer sees. They will also see, of course, if they ask, what's the portfolio, how much clean energy is in my supply, then it'll be a higher content. So it's a pretty incredible, innovative program that the state created, and they created it like 10 years ago, and it took a long time to get off the ground. And I should say, Southern California Edison, to its credit, and LA County has not opposed this, which is shocking. Because in San Diego, we're having the opposite experience. San Diego Gas and Electric is gearing up for war to stop this from happening. Because they don't like the idea of them giving up, you have a monopoly, Who wants to have competition? Who wants to give up full control? Not many people. So they're going to be fighting us. So that's it. We're kind of in we're gearing up for battle in San Diego. But here, at least, SoCal Edison has publicly stated they will not fight cities, and they have not fought LA County as they've moved into community choice, which has been great for the elected officials because they don't feel that pressure, that intensity of the decision. It's like they're able to make a decision just because it makes sense. Like from a public policy perspective, from an economic perspective, from an environmental perspective. So I'm really excited. So they have a website, by the way. LA County has a website all about their community choice program and how they're poised to adopt it that I think is worth looking up. Because again, I think it'll offer kind of more security and the idea of opportunity for here in Orange County. And it's a process, by the way. Like it's not like you just anything changes overnight. I mean, like I said, you got to do the study, you have to do a business plan. I mean, you have to do it methodically, you have to do it diligently, you have to make sure the economics in your region, like it makes sense, like you want to do the right thing for the right reasons and have the right data analysis done. And that's what we're doing in San Diego, and that's what any city should do. But the cool thing to me is that there's this innovative market solution available. And I think that's nonpartisan. Do you know what I mean? Like that's a co-benefit. And that's why our Republican mayor included community choice as an option. Because he's like, oh, this is a market-based solution? I'm in. I was like, yeah, it sure is. This is not my little hippie lefty solution, like this actually makes sense on all levels. And he's like, it totally does. This is crazy we have monopoly. I was like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So there are ways to message this to different stakeholders, but it benefits all of us. Hey, Rob.
Is there any concern about the utilities coming back and trying to recoup this lost revenue in other ways?
Yeah, so for sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm painting the picture a little bit maybe too nicely for Southern California, but in Northern California, there are existing and ongoing fights between the community choice programs of local governments and the utility, because they don't like to give up anything, like not even one dime. And again, they have that's their job, right? Corporations are required to make money for the shareholders, period. That is their mission. So they are going to fight for every dime. It just is. But so far that it's they've even gone to the state legislature and tried to change the state law that enables these programs to stop. And nobody knows this or remembers, and I didn't even know at the time, but in 2010, Pacific Gas and Electric, because again, this all started in Northern California, where the city started adopting these programs. Pacific Gas and Electric actually spent many millions of dollars putting on a statewide ballot initiative that tried to stop any future cities from adopting community choice energy. And none of us had a clue what they're like. None of us had ever heard of it. None of us even knew. But for some reason, the voters rejected it because it was like we knew who were sponsoring it. I mean, I don't really know, but it was a fascinating case study because none of us had, were in the mix at all in Southern California. But we just intuitively knew, like this was not, they were trying to stop cities from being able to do something or, something registered with the voting public to where it got killed. So they got stopped. But so then they lost at the ballot measure, at a ballot initiative, and then they've been at the state legislature many times trying to also stop community choice programs from moving forward. And all three monopoly utilities have been part of that. They all invest millions to lobby the legislature. But our legislature is held firm. Our governor is strongly behind this idea. I mean, again, it's a market-based solution. And it's like, you need to allow the marketplace to open. And you need to allow communities to have choice. You need to allow for local control if local governments want it. Again, local governments don't have to participate, but those who do, deserve the freedom of that choice. And that's kind of been the argument that has won the day. But I'd be remiss to suggest that they, even Southern California Edison, I'm sure LA County is sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop of like, they're gonna get involved in some way. But I am excited that LA County is moving forward, because again, I think it's gonna make it easier for all of us in the rest of Southern California to evaluate this as a legitimate option.
So if the city wants to take this on, do they have to spend their own money to do all the analysis and figure it out, or is it, when the state passes legislation,
Yeah.
do they appropriate monies to assist in that?
No. No, and that's a whole other conversation. I mean, we could just have a lecture, and I would bring other people in about community choice. Because, like I said, in Northern California, they have all the lessons learned, they have all the best practices. They've been through everything. They've had to figure out where to find money, who are the best people to do these studies. I mean, they've been through it all. But yes, so now there are banks, though, who see, like, oh, actually, this would be great if suddenly the local government is borrowing money from me to purchase electricity. There's a whole new market emerging and new players emerging that see the benefit. So there are ways to find the money for cities. And by the way, every city that has invested in kind of the upfront costs has gotten all those costs back in 1 year. That's how much revenue starts pouring into these local governments, like an unreal amount of revenue. And then suddenly they're like, oh, just pay that return on investment. This is faster than anything we've ever done in our lives. So it's an incredible program, and today I'm just kind of introducing it because you need to hear about it. I mean, like I said, this is not something you do overnight. It's not something you take lightly, but it is at least I'm just trying to introduce it as an idea of a program model that's available to local governments and as a way again to get to our 100% clean energy goal. And I'll just clearly go through. I mean, I'm probably at the end of my time. What time is it? Sorry, I feel like I've been talking forever.
12:18. We started late.
Okay, so how much more time do I have before I take any questions?
Well, we're scheduled, we have the room until 2, but we're scheduled for the program until 1.
Okay, so I'll keep going through a
Sure.
few more slides and I'll take any questions.
Maybe you want to hold questions and get through, make sure we get through everything.
Okay, so we'll just hold, so folks, I'm almost done. I'll just get through these slides. Actually, whatever. Yeah, so I'll get through this next set of slides. I forgot I put some new slides in. And then I'll take questions. And offline too, happy to take any questions. So the 50% goal also sort of is just like another, oh my God, how in the world are they going to do it? But we did even narrow this, who this applies to, this 50% target, to those communities in San Diego that are in what we have identified on a map as transit priority areas. So there are already communities that have high quality transit. This is defined by the state. So those are the communities where we think it's most viable, that we'll actually be able to build compact mixed-use infill development and pair it with protected bike lanes and high-frequency, high-quality transit, so that it actually is viable for someone to have an alternative way to get to work. Again, so I can't, I know Orange County is kind of a different beast, but that's just letting you know how in San Diego we're tackling that. And then the zero waste, that's a whole other story, but that's another key strategy. We already talked about trees, did. Oh, and so another component I want to highlight that we did in San Diego, because we're the first climate plan that we know about, because we spoke at some national conference recently. We actually prioritized what's called environmental justice communities. So those are low-income communities of color that have